So it's about time the BBC did some serious journalism about Gaza. And this is their own investigation. Although, once again, I mean, well, I'll give you my thoughts in a second. Just look at the video.
A strong international response to a BBC investigation highlighting the ill treatment of Palestinian medical staff by the Israeli Defense Forces at a hospital in Gaza last month. Our reporting includes evidence of people being detained, beaten, and prevented from carrying out vital medical duties. The Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, says the report is very disturbing, and he's called for answers from the Israelis. And the US State Department has also seen the investigation. Israel says it took over the Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis last month.
Oh, yeah, I bet they're really going to show them now from the State Department and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Anyway.
Believing Hamas fighters were based there. Several Israeli hostages who've been released say they were held on the premises. Israel maintains any abuse of detainees is strictly prohibited. Well, Ola Gearin is live in Jerusalem with the very latest for us now. Ola.
Clive, this was a lengthy, detailed forensic investigation by BBC journalists carried out over several weeks. The details were checked and cross-checked. They spoke to doctors, nurses, pharmacists, people who were displaced and living in the hospital grounds. Now, allegations that emerged were very specific, and those specific allegations were put to the Israeli army. They did not reply to the allegations in specifics. They did not make any denial of the specific allegations of mistreatment, but they told the BBC in general terms that medical staff at Nasser Hospital were not ill-treated during their operation.
Not for the first time in this war, Israeli soldiers have been filmed standing over stripped and kneeling detainees. But these are medical staff detained after the Israeli army overran the Nasser Hospital in Khan Younis. Most are still being held. For weeks, the medics had witnessed Israel's advance as it closed in around the hospital. The fighting in Khan Younis was fierce. Thousands of people who'd sought refuge in the grounds fled under fire. Even a hospital wasn't safe.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not going to show you the next scene because I don't think I can on YouTube. But yeah, it's not just even a hospital wasn't safe. All the hospitals are not safe. I mean, you know, need I remind you that the majority of hospitals in Gaza do not function anymore. They're out of service, right? I think you've got 36 hospitals and 28 of them don't work anymore. I mean, just preposterous. It's shocking that this is happening. It is. And you have to understand that even if they were functioning by some miracle, how can you have patients fighting infections when they don't have access to clean water and there's no medication and they're being shelled? I mean, you know, it's like every obstacle that makes sure people are healthy and healing in case they're wounded is put in place by the Israelis. But I want to describe to you what happens in the next scene, which they don't show. And this is a video that came out about 3 weeks ago, something like that. And I swear to God, it's like something out of a horror movie. You've got someone filming inside of the lobby of the hospital, and a guy like stumbles through the door, and he's like crawling on the floor with his leg fucking bleeding out. And the Israelis just keep firing. I mean, it's just horrific stuff. Really the worst imaginable. And remember, that's not even what the report is about. It's not even about just that scene. It's the fact that they've been holding the doctors and nurses in these positions, right?
Chairs.
Look at how they're treating the patients. Look at how the Israelis drag the patients outside of the hospitals and just leave them in the sunlight.
Mass weapons and medication, which it says supports accounts from Israeli hostages that they were held here.
Oh, so you're telling me Hamas took the Israeli hostages to hospital and fucking gave them medical care? Well, they're already being treated a whole lot better than the Palestinians who are detained by Israel. I can guarantee you that. How dare Hamas give the hostages medical care? Oh my God, the atrocity.
In the IDF's own footage, you can see hospital patients detained outside in their beds and wheelchairs with their hands zip-tied.
I mean, that is disgusting. I want you to look at this image and never forget that. Look at that person in their hospital bed with their hands tied up like that. I mean, this is straight up Nazis. The Israelis are straight up Nazis. Even worse, because they hijack the Holocaust and then they pretend they're the only victims in the Holocaust. They ignore all the gays, the priests, the political dissidents, Roma. So they hijack the Holocaust and then they use it to shut people up, and then they behave worse than the Nazis. I mean, what can I say? If the Israelis hypothetically should be the last people on earth to behave like this, because this happened to a lot of Jews, and yet they go and behave like this. Again, look at that. There's another person on the right, or actually several people on the right. You see where my mouse is? Look at that. With their hands bound in the hospital bed. I mean, can you think of more sick, depraved behavior?
And this was the treatment for medical staff. At least 49 of them forced to leave their posts and remove their surgical clothing. Israel says it was searching for concealed weapons and that among the 200 arrested at Nasser were terrorists posing as medics. Dr Amira Assouli had remained at Nasser throughout the siege. Before Israel's incursion, she risked her life to save others as people were shot inside the grounds. Later, she witnessed what happened to her fellow doctors.
It was tough for us to see how the doctors, who'd bravely stayed at the hospital despite the dangers, were stripped and beaten. Their hands were tied behind them and they were left in the sun for hours.
Dr Ahmed Sabha is one of very few medics to have since been released.
So I just want to make a point, because they say the Israelis stripped the doctors to check for weapons. I mean, are you serious? Really? You have to strip doctors and bind their hands and then leave them to cook in the sun? Really? You can't check any other way? Get another job if that's really your excuse. No one believes this crap. You're abusing them. You're abusing medical staff. You're torturing them.
He shows the positions they were forced to adopt for hours and says they were also tortured. His hand was broken by an Israeli soldier, he says, and muzzled dogs were set on him.
They forced us to kneel down with our eyes blindfolded. There was a pit in the ground, and we thought they would execute us and bury us there. We said our prayers, but they were just intimidating us.
The hospital manager who dealt with the Israelis during the raid says with so many staff detained, patients died.
So, my thoughts on this is that, but this is too little too late. Yes, it's great the BBC broadcast this. Yeah, well, where were you 5 months ago? This kind of behavior has been happening to Palestinians for decades. For decades. Do you know how many times I'm looking something up on Google, and then I find the same story from like 2 years ago, from 12 years ago. It is uncanny, almost the exact same headline. Jesus. I mean, sorry. Again, I know we should, give credit when credit is due and say, yes, this is a good report. Yes, I'm saying that, but I'm saying, why were they not talking about this when it actually happened? Why aren't they talking about all the cases when this happens? Because it does happen all the time. Every single hospital in Gaza has been subjected to one form or another of Israeli attacks. Every single one. It's not just Nasser Hospital that's been overrun by tanks. Look at Al-Ahli Hospital. at Baptiste Hospital. The Israelis, they killed hundreds of people in one fell swoop, and then had the audacity to blame Hamas. And then on top of that, look what they did to El Shifa Hospital, to the Indonesian hospital. I mean, the list is endless. So, you know, my point here is that, yeah, good report, but too little, too late. Because they're going to go back the next second to giving Israeli guests the mic, you know, to brainwashing people with propaganda. And I want to remind you of something. Why does it have to be medical staff for you to make the case that this is bad treatment? Let's say, for example, these weren't medical staff. And what gives the Israelis the right to put people like that in the sun and you know, put them in torture and stress positions and strip them and degrade them? Who the hell are these people? It's really scandalous, you know, and then they give us these fake performances like this one.
The BBC hospital was raised today in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. The Foreign Secretary now calling for answers.
These are very disturbing pictures and reports that have come out from this hospital, and we need to get to the bottom of what exactly happened, and we need answers from the Israelis about that. And when we have those, then it'll be easier to comment.
In Washington.
Really, you need answers from the Israelis. What, you can't just look at the photos. That's not enough. You need the Israelis to say something.
Washington too, questions are being asked about the BBC investigation.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Has the US raised it with Israel?
I have only seen the report. I don't know that if we have raised it, but I would expect that we would. It is the type of cases that we often raise with them to seek more information and to make clear, as we always have, that any detainee should be treated in strict compliance with international humanitarian law.
Once again, what possible information do you need from them? Like, what excuse is going to justify, you know, taking patients out into a courtyard in the hospital bed and then binding their hands? What possible scenario? It's amazing. It's really amazing. Anyway, I just wanted to show you this. It's such a, you know, really awful fate. And you know what's disgusting is that there's this has happened to doctors and medics and civilians and all across Gaza. And if you're someone in the West Bank, you could just as easily be kidnapped, harassed, and tortured like this by the Israelis. It happens all the time. This isn't even something new. What's new is the scale of it, without question, the scale of it. But the treatment, people in Gaza and the West Bank and Jerusalem, they've been treated like this by the Israelis forever. That's what people don't understand. Like this, what's happening right now is just being broadcast to us because of the technology that's available, and of course the scale of what's happening is so, you know, is so big that it matters, of course, that it draws attention. But none of these actions or acts or crimes, you know, these affronts on Palestinians at the hands of Israelis are actually new, right? Of course, with the exception of technological ones like the drones and so on, which didn't exist 60 years ago. But you take my point. There was an account of a medic in Gaza. Now, I posted this. Let me fetch the link for you. Just one moment. So this is a health. This is a medic's account of what happened to him in Gaza, and I'm posting the link in the chat. So he got kidnapped by the Israelis. They tortured him, and then the Americans who are in Gaza also tortured him. So again, these are U.S. troops in Gaza that also tortured this man. And I want you to please read this account, because I swear to God, it's like a book you can't put down. It's so horrific. You want to stop reading, but you can't stop reading because you have to bear witness to this affront. Once again, I'm pasting it again in the chats. It's so horrific. And, you know, all types of stuff. Like he got put in, you know, he got given drugs, physically abused. I mean, you name it. It's really awful. This is one person, one medic. let me tell you, let me just end with this. Whatever you think is happening in Gaza, it's 10 times worse. It's a very sobering thought. Whatever you think is happening in Gaza, it's 10 times worse. I don't even know what to say, man. I really don't even know what to say. There's no, they don't even bother pretending anymore that they care about journalists, healthcare workers, civilians. Nothing. It's just, they have truly, you know, in the purest sense of a carte blanche or a blank check, they have given a carte blanche to the Israelis. Truly. And it is a nasty, nasty list.